Hi all, this is your fall newsletter entitled Your Exquisite Earth School Curriculum. Comes with a get out of karmic jail free pass, but terms and conditions apply. It starts with a quote by Ram Dass. What has changed is that before, my neuroses were these huge big things that were very frightening, and they took me over. And now they're sort of like little schmoos. They're little friendly beings, and I invite them in for tea. Unquote. Here we go. Happy fall. Right now, karmic teacher Saturn, retrograde, is almost stationary in the sky as he prepares to go direct on October 23rd, at which point he will literally zoom through the final 12 degrees of innovative Aquarius before entering spiritual Pisces on March 8th, 2023. In times like these, when structure ruling Saturn is moving through the last degrees of a sign, there's always a sense of urgency to get on with our karmic lessons. Amping up the pressure throughout the same exact period, action-oriented Mars is retrograde in mental Gemini, inspiring us to focus on the who, what, why, and where as more of an inside job. In addition, transformational Pluto is stationing direct on October 8th, in the final degrees of structure ruling Capricorn. And while he will not move fully into Aquarius until 2025, with a 3-month preview in 2024 starting in March, over the next 2 years, these last few crucial degrees of Capricorn also mark the passage back and forth in his continuing transit of the USA Pluto return. This means that more and more decrepit external structures that we rely on may start disintegrating, hopefully not totally, at an alarmingly accelerated rate. Think bridges, tunnels, power plants, water mains, etc. All this to get our attention and to inspire governments and the powers that be to rebuild crumbling infrastructure more proactively. Also, outmoded and unsafe societal structures that have long outlived their time, like the medical, health insurance, pharma industrial complex, will be seen by the masses more and more negatively, which will speed momentum to create new structures that serve humanity's needs better, looking towards the future in this new Aquarian age of interconnectedness. And most importantly, both types of innovation need to be much more sustainable models for growth that support and sustain Mother Earth rather than harming her. The chances for replacing a humongous amount of dilapidated infrastructure or other integral parts of society before some of them at least partially collapse is highly unlikely, without some disasters waking us up more during the time frame allotted. This is because it's human nature to always choose the lesser pain in most cases, and this certainly includes profit loss considerations. Because of the probabilities baked in astrologically to our coming attractions globally, it helps to maintain a higher truth perspective that, quote, everything is always happening perfectly in the divine plan, including chaos. All structures, internal and external, need to cyclically break down and fall apart before there can be a transformational rebirth from the ashes, unquote. That's the quote by me. As we cannot help but observe, Gaia is now reacting to the abuse and mistreatment heaped upon her by 7 billion humans in a mass karmic event by taking the form of Kali, the devouring Hindu goddess of destruction. Synonyms for destruction: obliteration, annihilation, devastation, demolition. While the Earth goddess continues to play out this Plutonian role for the foreseeable future, we are the witnesses and victims, aka volunteers on the soul level, as ongoing pollution, global warming, and climate change wreak havoc and suffering all over the planet. And this is just the beginning. For when Kali gets pissed off, the only way to right the balance is through cycles of death and ultimately rebirth. But in the Kali Yuga, a highly fitting name for the dark age we're in, we'll most probably find ourselves sitting amidst the ashes at some point, whether in our own backyards or empathetically via CNN. So we might as well get used to contemplating the primordial realm of the void and derive what solace we can with the knowledge that it is out of this ultimate emptiness that all forms continuously arise and fall away in an infinite loop. As our souls all volunteer to be born at this time in history, it behooves us to deepen our appreciation and gratitude for the poignant and precious moments of simple daily grace and open-hearted joy in being alive in this ever more increasingly ephemeral plane. Similarly, perhaps the most pertinent and impactful, but not for the faint of heart, ancient Buddhist practice for these times is charnel ground meditation. There's a link for that. And for more, there's a link to owning our inner Pluto before it eats us for lunch. And all links can be activated through the website link to this article. On a personal level, these planetary forces are encouraging us to clean up our psychological closets of all the antiquated baggage of personality traits that have become dead weight, but which we keep lugging around out of neuroses and habit. It is these not always fully conscious aspects of the little self-ego, fueled by our karmic rut of identity, that need to be re-examined so we can jettison those parts of our infrastructure which no longer serve our awakening at a higher frequency of operations going forward. If we truly aspire to align more with our souls and source, there's no better time to start mindfully unwinding these habitual karmic grooves, aka samskaras, which are clogging up our vertical channels. For most of us, taking the low but most traveled road means that we continue to allow our samskaras to wind deeper into our mental, emotional, and psychic bodies through ignorance, sleepwalking, inertia, and greed. Then the allotted karma which we carried into this incarnation to be unwound just keeps winding deeper and deeper into our beings and continues to be schlepped around from lifetime to lifetime, growing ever heavier. When instead we could choose to take the high road and allow our innate desire for spiritual evolution to become our North Star. As we make soul growth our priority, it's time to step into the power of accepting that we're our own karmic judge, jury, and parole board. And who else could they be? Once we stop deluding ourselves by hanging curtains in our windowless cells of ego-armored identity and trying to convince ourselves that, quote-unquote, it's not so bad, then we can get on with the work to release and dissolve that which has kept us in bondage. So how do we perform this feat of liberation while we have this window of opportunity? Here are some questions to ponder. 1. Are we doing the best we can and being impeccable with our word? 2. Can we forgive ourselves for being wounded and imperfect as we hold the vision of moving towards healing and wholeness? 3. Do we believe we're worthy of receiving our birthright of infinite abundance on all levels, health, love, resources, and know there's enough to go around? 4. Can we extend this view to all beings? When we can answer these questions in the affirmative, then we're ready to stamp our records, quote-unquote, time served. But if we still resist being fully open to the deepest levels of self-love and forgiveness, then to this degree are we keeping ourselves in karmic lockdown with no set date for parole. From the perspective of Saturn, Lord of Karma, the vast majority of souls in human incarnations are trapped within a karmic prison of their own making, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. Our limiting karmic belief structure about what we think we deserve and is possible for us creates the personal reality we allow ourselves to dwell in. Some of our prisons are tiny, mucky, solitary cells, and others are the size of giant sports arenas, but either way, there's always room for expansion. Some of the worst cases of karmic lockdown I've dealt with are with clients who harbor beliefs about what spiritually evolved old souls they are. This allows them to judge others as less than and keeps them painfully separate and isolated within their delusional self-image cells. And while they may believe they're more enlightened than most, nobody wants to play with them. In many cases, even their own children won't speak to them. Conversely, cases of false humility with feelings and beliefs of unworthiness are another extreme but very common form of solitary confinement. Other classic karmic ruts of identity revolve around beliefs of powerlessness, such as having no power is safer as one can be invisible, and then there is less chance of being in the target area of getting whacked. How the mighty have fallen is a common theme here. Next, it's lonely at the top. True, but since one's spiritual journey is always traveled alone, we might as well get where we're going. Next, fear of failure and or success. This double-edged sword creates immobility, sloth, and inertia. And lastly, personal power and or money are spiritually bad. Rather than just various 3D forms taken by source energy and divine abundance as part of the learning curve in our curriculum as co-creators. Then there are those souls who, believe it or not, wouldn't know who they were without continuous pain and suffering in their lives. This is especially true in the romantic area where, quote, if it doesn't hurt, then it's not true love, unquote, is played over and over again as it winds deeper into our samskaras. Sometimes this suffering is at the physical level of creating life-threatening diseases, loss of different organs every few years, or chronic illnesses with no quote-unquote cure. For those who have a pattern of health crises, this rut of identity will just keep rotating to new symptoms or body parts until the root causes, aka limiting karmic beliefs, are unhooked and dissolved. Many times when I do health readings, the core issue is a deep ambivalence to being fully embodied as a human being in the earth plane. This usually comes from beliefs that it is not safe here or that the earth plane is not their true home. And it is this ambivalence that the body is responding to by creating symptoms and disease to help reinforce our fluctuating secret desire to check out. So unless we make a daily conscious commitment to the life force and stop feeding our death urge through ambivalence, especially in the third Saturn cycle, which I call the victory round from age 60 to 90, when ambivalence and ingratitude about being in this precious incarnation literally become killers. Ambivalence and ingratitude literally become killers. My channel readings on the utility of pain state that, quote, pain is a signal tone from the higher self that a course correction is indicated, unquote. It begins on the spiritual and psychic levels, and when this is too subtle to get our attention, as it usually is, then the pain moves down through the mental, emotional, and energy bodies until finally it most assuredly gets our attention at the physical levels of dis-ease. If we continuously defend against having to go through the clean, sharp, growing pains that life presents and avoid changing ourselves in our path through course corrections, then suffering ensues from our resistance to what is. That is, until we finally surrender, which may happen before our body karma takes us fully out. Although in many cases, going through to the other side through the vehicle of our body, if played out consciously and with full surrender, at least by our last breath, completely heals that which we took incarnation for in the first place. Now there's a refreshing perspective on dropping the body. Not only is it absolutely safe, but we win the prize of being released from our allotted karma at the same time. Yay! Another very common rut is when one is invested in a self-pity trap, in which their identity is wrapped around being unlucky in love or with money or any other external fixation that they believe if only their desires were fulfilled in this area, then they'd be happy. Then there are those who have such fear and aversion to being alone, i.e. without a significant other in a romantic relationship, that they make themselves miserably unhappy in a loneliness lockdown rather than choosing to joyously commune with all of life as their primary relationship. All the above listed karmic ruts are clogging up our inner spaciousness and making it feel like a prison. So whether you recognize yours as a belief of being powerless, unworthy, unlucky, having an attachment to pain, or some other variation, the question we need to ask ourselves if we want our get out of karmic jail free pass is, quote, who would we be without this default identity, unquote. These are just a few examples, but whatever type of karmic rut we're stuck in, whether high and mighty or weak and low, there's no possibility of parole until we re-examine our limiting beliefs and fears and become willing to accept that no matter how quote-unquote legitimate they might feel from past life experiences, they are unequivocally not true in the here and now. The mantra I share with my psychic therapy clients when we're doing past life or childhood regression, so that they can consciously integrate the soul lessons of traumatic experience and leave behind any reactionary beliefs, is, quote-unquote, that was then and this is now. For when we carry these as if they're personal truths, they become the main impediment keeping us from flying free. If you'd like more clarity and guidance on your present karmic challenges, please consider there's a link to karmic consultations. After these next 4 months, Saturn will not be transiting through the final degrees of Aquarius for another 28 to 30 years. Every incarnation is a precious opportunity for awakening, and every moment in every relationship, especially with ourselves, is a priceless opportunity to catalyze and open to our true nature. So it is our choice to make the most of this time to review, recalibrate, refine, and reboot our vision of who we really are and why we're here, to free ourselves from belief-based karmic bondage. For if nothing changes, i.e. our beliefs, then nothing changes. And this is the exact exquisite equation for our liberation. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Once we let go of old attachments that truly no longer define who we're becoming, we get to experience a new sense of inner spaciousness in a more timeless, soul-centered way. Since this is Pluto's last full year in Capricorn in our lifetimes, it is packing quite the wallop for most of us. This is especially exacerbated with the transiting south node of our karmic past in Plutonian Scorpio, stirring up deep-rooted past life memories of old ways of being that we may still be holding on to as a defense of the little self against the void. The final degrees of a Pluto transit in any sign are about as intense as it gets, so before the first preview transit into Aquarius in March 2023, Pluto will be urging us to dig deeper into our psyches to root out those parts of our personality that still arise as outgrown obsessive desires. During this inner excavation process, we may well experience a letting go or ripping away and falling away, aka complete dissolution, of karmically regressive parts of ourselves to a greater extent than ever before. The eclipse cycle this fall begins on October 25th with the new moon eclipse in Scorpio, and then on November 8th we have a real wild card full moon eclipse in Taurus, exactly conjunct trickster of awakening Uranus. All this will also be pumping up these Plutonian energies to the max, as it's setting the tone for the next 6 months and beyond, with a decisive theme of culminating endings, at times sudden and shocking, of people, places, things, circumstances, as well as parts of our ego identity. Rest assured that this final year of Pluto in Capricorn, which commenced in December 2008, will clear the path forward one way or another. Since Pluto operates through cycles of death and rebirth wherever we have transiting Pluto now, especially if it is sitting on an angle or personal planet or in hard aspect to it, we may feel as if the power of the Plutonian metamorphosis has actually been taken out of our hands in conscious volition. Therefore, this transit can be quite the FGO, fucking growth opportunity. I call this transit the quote-unquote master cleanse, as it wipes away all that is keeping us stuck in our samskaras. For many of the clients I've been reading for who are having one of these master cleanse Plutonian experiences, it can feel like a steamroller effect that flattens us out, back and forth, until there is truly nobody home, and we are literally sitting in the void while simultaneously watching and, when called to in the flow, playing out our roles in the best show in the cosmos. The nature of my Plutonian master cleanse is that I am in the middle of 5 passes over my ascendant north node of destiny, which are exactly conjunct with the USA's Pluto. And for more, there's a link to astrology readings. In closing, as we unwind our samskaras one layer at a time, the goal is not to unwind these tens of thousands of karmic grooves all the way to the bottom, although it is possible as they're not infinite, but rather than feel the need to eradicate them all, if we can just create enough inner space to view all of our schmooze without judgment, attachment, or aversion, and certainly not with indifference, but with a heart-centered, playful acceptance of all of ourselves, and thus all of life, in a space of non-reactivity and joy in being. Embracing what we have the most fear, clinging, dislike, or judgment of in ourselves and in life is our ticket to ride free, fully embodied, and in all dimensions. Enjoying the game of Leela, aka cosmic play, with everything arising in us and in others and in life, as perfect vehicles for our highest teaching and the key to our liberation while fully present in the here and now. Here are some of the challenging questions I've been working with lately. 1. Do we know that anyone we've ever loved is always with us in our hearts, whether we see them again in this life or not? And smile. 2. Can we be without attachment or aversion to people coming into and out of our lives? And smile. 3. Can we accept that those whom fate or their own free will has taken from us are always sparing us from some greater pain? And smile. Big smile here. 4. Do we know in our hearts that it's much better to play alone with all of life than to be imprisoned in karmic bondage with others or parts of ourselves that are negative, draining, or toxic? And smile. 5. When we choose to part from someone or they from us, can we wish them all good things on their journeys forward with heartfelt gratitude for lessons learned and karmic gains made, regardless of the price paid? And smile. When I first read this quote ages ago, it made me smile in a way that has kept my spirits up ever since, as again from Ram Dass. Quote, in all that time, I have not gotten rid of one neurosis, not one. The only thing that's changed is, where previously they were these huge monsters of, no, don't take me over again, that kind of stuff, sitting in the bathtub cowering. Now they're like these little schmoos, you know? Oh, sexual perversity, there you are. I haven't seen you in days. Come on in and have some tea. And to me, that is the product of the spiritual path, from a locked prison cell to an expansive football field where we play. Unquote. My vision: imagine your former prison cell becoming a playpen that is continuously expanding until it encompasses the whole earth plane and beyond, ultimately becoming one with the cosmic playing fields of Source. Yay! Signed off, in love with Leela. And 2 final quotes. Another by Ram Dass, since he's been on my mind a lot lately. Quote, "A guru is a cooked goose. A guru is done. The difference between a cave and a city makes no difference to a guru. To a teacher, it makes a hell of a lot of difference, because a teacher is pointing the way, while the guru is the way. It's a very different quality. What a guru does is mirror for you where you aren't. That's all they do." Unquote. And the last quote, which is a Taoist axiom, which I think of all the time. Quote, "A lesser sage lives in a cave in the mountains. A greater sage lives in the heart of the city." So this is Joan signing off from the heart of the East Village in